Good morning, Captain Redmond.
Hi, ma'am.
Please leave your book on the counter over there and take a seat.
Good morning, Captain Redmond. I'm Lieutenant Colonel McIntyre. Next to me is Dr. Michelle Miller, and next to her is Mr. Bill Kaczynski. We're your panel for today's exam.
I will now read you the opening instructions. We're now conducting the oral comprehensive examination. This oral comprehensive examination consists of 4 integrated essay questions covering the core curriculum. Your responses represent your individual understanding of the material. After I read each of the questions, please ensure that you understand the question. You will have a total of 9 minutes to respond to each question. Mr. Kaczynski here will be your timekeeper. Pen, paper, and whiteboard are provided for your use if you so desire. Feel free to write down initial thoughts or an outline, but understand that the time that you use for this is included in the total of the 9 minutes allowed for each question. At the 7-minute mark, Mr. Kaczynski will give you a warning that only 2 minutes remain for your answer. At the 9-minute mark, he will then ask you to stop and we'll move on to the next question. The intent for each of these questions is to challenge you to reflect broadly and synthetically, crossing departmental curricular boundaries in forming answers. The best answers demonstrate fluency across the core curriculum. We will assess whether or not you have obtained a grasp of the military knowledge reasonably expected of a CGSOC graduate. At the conclusion of the 4 questions, we will ask you to leave the room for the examining committee to discuss your answers and determine if you've passed or failed the oral portion of this examination. Upon making that determination, we'll call you back into the room to provide you feedback on your effort. Do you have any questions?
I do. I just want to verify I am able to use paper to sketch out an outline, and I can use the whiteboards here.
That's
Yes,
correct.
we encourage you to do that with the resources you have to prepare yourself for your answers.
Okay. Then I think I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be asking the first question today. Please give us a historical example that exemplifies the concept of trust within an organization.
Sir, can you give that to me one more time?
Absolutely. Give us a historical example that exemplifies the concept of trust within an organization.
Time starts now.
Okay, I think I'm ready to start answering your question. So you wanted me to give an example of trust, and I think one of the best examples we have is in our reading message to Garcia. The author, his name was Eldred Hubbard, and he wrote the article in 1899. Now Hubbard wrote for a publication quite frequently, and this particular article came about because he needed space to fill in his magazine publication. I think it's a great article because it's short, it's succinct, and it gets to the point, answers a lot of questions about trust within an organization and why we're motivated to do some of the things that we do. As a final point to Hubbard before I move on to the meaning of the message to Garcia, he had his own publication company and he was very prolific. Throughout the course of his life, though, he didn't live to be 100. He and his teammates published a lot of different articles with his own publishing company to ensure that his writings weren't aligned with a particular party or weren't in any way influenced by any outside organizations. He used to keep a journal too every day, so when he would read the newspaper, if he liked how something sounded or not political people, but writers of the time, he would write down little notes in a journal. So moving on to Message to Garcia. Within this 2 to 3 page message, we find that the essay shows the difficulty in dealing with employees who are incompetent, lazy, thoughtless, obstructionists. They impede the work of the people around them. And, you know, when you have good people in an organization that want to do good things, if you're constantly exposed to this negative energy like this, you know, that's going to affect the entire organization. So ideally, what you want is someone that will obey instructions without asking a lot of needless questions. They work diligently without a lot of supervision. They take the initiative to overcome obstacles, but it doesn't mean that they don't ask questions when they get stuck. It means that they exhaust all their resources until they're absolutely in a place where they need to get the next level of guidance. And they complete their missions promptly. So the historical background to the message, that's what the message was about, but the historical background was that during the Spanish-American War, President McKinley needed to get a message to one of the rebel leaders in Cuba, and his name was Garcia. And I imagine him sitting in his office saying, gee, I wonder how we can get this message to Garcia, because you'd think, you know, they have telegraphs at that time, they've got couriers, they got everything else, but they needed a certain man for a certain job, and they chose Lieutenant Rowan to go deliver this message. And he rode over the jungles in Cuba, and he eventually did find Garcia and deliver the message promptly. But what Garcia didn't do when he was riding through the jungles of Cuba was he didn't stop at every unit and say, do you know where Garcia is? How can I find Garcia? You know, he asked sources that he knew. He asked really good questions. He didn't pass along and say, hey, gee, you know, the president, he wants this message to Garcia. You think you can help me out? I'll just wait here until you give me the answer that I want. You know, he did take the initiative, and he did eventually find the rebel leader. So the last part that I'll close with is Hubbard didn't serve in the military, so it's kind of interesting that he wrote on a topic like this, but he was interested in a lot of different things, and unfortunately, though he was prolific, we miss him because he doesn't write anything after 1915. He was killed when the Lusitania sunk in May of 1915, but we do have this great legacy and this great leadership message that we can share with our subordinates. I think that's all I have.
Okay. I'd like to ask a follow-up question. Okay. Nice job in time-wise. We've got 2 minutes remaining at this point.
Okay.
My follow-up question would be, can you describe a little bit more about trust in terms of the message to Garcia in mission accomplishment?
I just need a second. So I think I'm going to borrow from General Perkins' concept of mission command, which he says that we need to be able to have the ability to exploit the relative advantage on a battlefield. So, and that relative advantage is only temporary. So, not only was Lieutenant Rowan able to do that, but what Perkins says is in order for anybody to accomplish that mission, you have to have trust within your subordinates. So I would say that Lieutenant Rowan was picked, and the administration and his superiors trusted him inherently to accomplish his mission.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything else to add for that question?
I don't, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, congratulations. You passed the oral comprehensive examination with an official passing score of X. Although you passed the examination, it is important to build upon your performance in the future and to continue to learn and apply what you've learned during the Common Core. Within the next 10 days, you'll receive written feedback on your performance. Committee members will be available for specific feedback later if desired. I do want to remind you that this is an examination, and in accordance with CGSC Bulletin 920, you may not share this information on this oral exam with any student who has not yet taken the exam. This concludes the oral comprehensive examination. Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Captain Redmond, if you would please explain the military operation encirclement, providing a description of the types of encirclements, historical examples, and the risks.
So that's an FM 3.0, right? Encirclement?
Captain Redmond, you'll need to tell us that.
Yeah, see, I kind of remember that from class. I think we went over it in 3.0. Yeah, that's my answer. Well, wait a second. So I remember from class 2, said something about encirclements were very difficult maneuvers because they're pretty complex. There's examples of some successful and unsuccessful encirclement operations throughout history. Wait a second. What was the second part of that question?
Okay, the second part of the question was the types of encirclements, the historical examples, and the risks.
Thank you. So there have been many encirclement operations in military campaigns throughout history, and a timeline of history can provide those. Risk in encirclements are a loss of resupply lines and the need to reposition forces to counter offensives by the enemy. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm done.
Okay. Nothing else you'd like to add?
No, I think I got it.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think I have some questions for you. Maybe you could elaborate then on Alexander the Great or Sun Tzu, Napoleon, Hannibal, anything?
Yeah, they're pretty historical figures, and Alexander the Great was pretty great. Napoleon was, well, you know, there was Waterloo. Yeah, Waterloo is probably a good example of encirclements. I don't know why I didn't think of that before. Yeah. Okay.
That's all I have.
Anything?
I have no follow-up questions.
Okay, and part 3 of the question was kind of about risks. Could you discuss risks a little bit more detailed for us, please?
Well, I mean, if your force is encircled, then you die, right? That's a pretty big risk.
Okay. Anything else to add?
No.
Captain Redmond.
Say X again.
The examining committee has considered your responses to the questions, and your performance is assessed as unsatisfactory, with an unofficial score of X. Within the next 10 days, you'll receive written feedback on your performance. If you feel this assessment did not accurately assess your performance, you may appeal the grade earned on the oral exam in accordance with Bulletin 903. Although an unsatisfactory score is serious, this alone does not constitute a failure of the overall comprehensive exam. Your overall grade for the X100 block is a combination of both the online Blackboard exam and this oral exam. If you believe that you've earned an overall letter grade of a U for the X-Ray 100 course, see your SGA as soon as possible. I recommend and encourage you to speak with each members of the examining committee for specific feedback on your responses at a later date. And the members of the examining committee will provide insight on how your answers could have been stronger or demonstrated greater integration of the curriculum. I do want to remind you that this is an examination, and in accordance with CJSC Bulletin 920, you may not share the information on this oral exam with any student who has not yet taken the exam. This concludes your portion of the oral comprehensive examination. Thank you.